Hello, welcome to the wood shop of Wood Spun Round. This is Doug. It is good to have you today. Got a little special project here. I've been working on these, learning how to do them, doing a spiral ribbon finial. So I've started off here with a pretty good sized chunk of oak. Oak's not the best in the world. You really need more of a closed grain wood, but a hardwood. You don't want a softwood for this project. This piece is about 6 inches long. We're going to round it down, put a tenon on it, put it in the chuck. Right now I've got a drive center in the chuck, and right there you see I'm putting the tenon on it. I've got it nice and round, and it's ready to go. So as soon as I get this size, we'll flip it around. And then, now that I've got it flipped around, I'm going to drill. Happen to be drilling a 1/2 inch hole. I'm going to go about 2.5 to 2 3/4 inches deep. And this hole really needs to be done on the lathe so that that hole is in the same line, in the same plane as what you're turning in. First time I tried this, I tried it on the drill press, and it just did not work. I was slightly off plane, and I ended up going through the side of it. So anyway, it's been drilled, and I'm starting to thin it down. I'm going to mark it here real quick as to what I want. I need to know where the bottom of the hole is, and then also where I want the bottom of this ribbon section to be. It needs to be a little longer than what the bottom of the hole, or yes, a little longer than what the bottom of the hole is. Well, it'll be self-explanatory when we get toward the end. So I'm going to bring up the skew now, and we're just going to work on kind of shaping as well as thinning down this ribbon section. This is basically a hollow tube at this point, down to right there where I'm working. And I'm just trying to cut into it and round off the bottom here. Nice little fine shavings. You really need a sharp tool, because you don't want to have a mishap because you've been pressing too hard. It is possible to break it. But at this point, we're still fairly thick on that wood, and you'll see here in just a moment. I get it down pretty thin. Now you're starting to see how thin it really is. And I want it straight across here. I don't want it. I don't want it to be like a bowl, or excuse me, a pin where it swells in the middle or anything like that. I want it really parallel all the way down. And so the ribbon area is pretty well done as far as the turning goes, but I want to go ahead and do the rest of the finial. Once we cut into that ribbon section, it's going to get awfully weak, and there's no way to really support the end of it. So while I can still support it, I'm going to get my 1/2 inch bowl gouge here, or excuse me, my 1/2 inch skew. I'm going to put a bit of a ball underneath that ribbon section before we terminate that finial. And I'm not going to show you all this. Turning a finial, the design is really up to the maker. This is just a simple idea that I wanted to use. I've done it a couple of times. I kind of like it. So I'll have the ribbon section, then a ball underneath that, and then terminate the finial right underneath the ball, or above the ball, which depends on which direction I'm using it, whether it's a top finial or a drop underneath something. Getting a nice sharp transition on top of the ball here. Just a little more thinning See that I've got the ball pretty well defined top and bottom. We got it down thin enough. Now we're going to sand. I sand this from 80 grit all the way up to 320 grit. And the sanding really needs to be done now, be pretty well complete. Just like I said a while ago, here in a minute we're going to cut this ribbon so that it actually looks like a ribbon. And it'll lose all of its integrity, so you don't want to be spinning it a whole lot once you've cut the ribbon. Putting some tape on. This is going to be kind of my guide for cutting. I'm going to keep the part that has the tape on it, and the part that does not will be cut away. So I'm just using some masking tape and putting it on here at an angle so it spirals its way up. I'm going to start off with a little small carbide saw bit in my Dremel tool. This is pretty thin wood, and so this little saw bit does a pretty good job of cutting through it. If you get it too thick, this bit won't cut through. You need one of the larger saw bits for your Dremel, and I just don't have one. This is the only saw bit I've got. But it does a fairly good job if I get it thin enough. So very carefully going around just along the edge of that tape, cutting out this spiral. One of the things I've learned as well is that you need to kind of keep the two sides of the part you're cutting out equal. Try to keep those, you got to cut one and then cut the other down to that spot, or maybe just a little further. Just kind of go back and forth. Don't try to go all the way down one side and then go down the other side. You'll get some vibration, and that'll cause you some issues. I had enough issues with this just being oak. That open grain of oak, it doesn't like some of the vibration that is caused by doing all this. You can see the dark lines there where I'm cutting through. It's going to work out just fine. We're going to, I'm going to take an intermediate cut here to cut off that upper section. And that just keeps me from worrying about the vibration and from vibrating some other parts that don't need to vibrate. So anyway, I got that top part done. Now we're going to do the lower section. This is a little bit more complicated because you want, when you get to the bottom, you want there to be a kind of a continuous curve there around the bottom. So you have to kind of cut and then know that you're going to have to come back and do a little bit of carving, a little bit of sanding. In my case, it's a lot of carving and a lot of sanding. I am not a carver, never claimed to be, but when I tried this a couple of weeks ago, it worked out pretty well, and I kind of enjoyed it. You can kind of see there where I've drawn in the curve coming across to the other side, and of course a saw blade can't cut a curve like that, so I'm going to kind of chop at it a little bit, get it where it's out of there. Then we'll use a carving bit and a sanding bit, and we'll get it all smoothed up. About messed up there. I don't know if you can see it or not, but every once in a while I get a little bit of smoke out of there. Get a little bit cockeyed on that line, and it builds up a little bit of heat. You want to stay away from building up heat if you can. I was not completely successful at that, but I did the best I could. And now there's a little spot in there holding it somewhere. I can't quite find it. So I'm trying to go around and find the spot that's still solid. Well, Don't know what I'm doing. Thinking maybe? That's doubtful. Anyway, back to it. Let's go ahead and cut that. See if we can take another chunk out of it. There's a little bit of smoke that you see. Getting just a little bit warm. Well, what in the world's holding it? There it goes. Now I'm just going to kind of whittle away at this bottom section. And it just popped loose. I was kind of fortunate there. I had it pretty well cut, just one little place. And as soon as that broke loose, the whole piece came out. Just taking that saw blade out. Now let's put a carving bit in there. We'll work on smoothing those edges up. That bottom section particularly needs some carving done to get those curves nice and smooth. And then we'll do some sanding after I get through with this part of it. Don't remember the number of that bit. It's like a 196 maybe. There are 2 in a pack. Carbide tip carving bit is what it's called. There's the problem with the oak. That open grain, there was an open section there, and it just kind of, it broke. I was taking the tape off here, see if I could get in there and glue it, but ended up dropping it and losing it in the shavings. And as I looked at it, it was no problem. It actually made the design look better than what I had. So I did not worry about trying to find that little piece. Just went ahead, sanded it down, got it real nice and smooth, and it worked out really, really well. You'll see here in a minute. There we've got the carving bit, just cleaning up that little bottom area. Sorry, my hand's kind of in the way there, but you get the idea. Just realized what I was doing, I guess, and got my hand on the other side, but still in the way. Just hard to see. You see the edges there. Some of the edges get just a little bit burn on them from the bits. The bits are turning at such a high rate of speed, and this is oak, so they don't cut this wood that well, but they do burn a little bit. But that's not a problem. This is going to end up being painted black here in just a moment. Switched over now to the sanding bit. This is just a little barrel sander with a sandpaper sleeve. Was talking about these with another YouTuber the other day, and sometimes these little sleeves last a long time. Sometimes you barely use them and they're done. This one has been used on 2 or 3 of these finials, and it's not like it's brand new, but it's in great shape. So I'm still using it. It did a great job for me. That's not smoke coming off. That's sanding dust. Just a little fine sanding dust. And I'm just trying to get some of the lumps and bumps out, smooth up some of the edges, trying to blend some of those edges. Some of them are not. You got a definite edge, and I'm trying to blend those edges so that there's not really an edge left. And that's both sides. I'm almost through as far as showing you this, and I'll show you the next step here in just half a second. Doesn't take too much longer than this, I don't think. I hope not. Still, around that bottom is just a little tricky because of the angles, getting that good and smooth. And when I do the upper parts, you see my left hand there underneath the finial. I'm kind of holding it so it doesn't vibrate. Not a lot of wood there, and it just wants to vibrate. And then here's the final sanding step, a little hand sanding, just to smooth out some of the lumps and bumps that I didn't get even with the sanding mandrel there. If I'm remembering right, this is just a piece of 320. It's folded up, and I'm just kind of going along that edge just to blend and smooth. It's kind of the name of the game, blend and smooth. Just really no substitute for hand sanding. We all hate to do it, but sometimes it's just what has to be done. All right, let's go ahead and start the parting process. I'm not going to completely part it here. I'm going to leave it on. In fact, it's still on because I'm putting finish on my finish. This is going to have a pretty interesting process. I think you're going to like the results. But I'm just putting in my parting line in here so that when I do start to finish, I don't have to go through my finish to part it. I've got my part started, and then we can part it off after a little later, and we won't bother anything. So just one parting line just to get things started. And you see me measuring there. I'm using a little 1/4-inch wrench. For the folks in England, it's a 1/4-inch spanner, but it's the same thing. Box end wrench, just giving me my measurement so I don't have to worry about the calipers and being sure I'm right with that. That wrench gives it to me perfectly. Giving myself just a little undercut to the base of that finial, so when it goes onto something, it sits on the edges and there won't be any gaps. Making sure it's 1/4-inch, the entire length of it. And it was just a little thick right against the finial, so I'm going back in just to clean it up just a hair. And now I see it's fine. I'm going to start off with some black acrylic paint. This is just a very basic acrylic paint, very inexpensive. Got my brush there. I'm going to put a little out on my board, and then take my brush and paint it on. I don't need to take a lot of time here because this is not the final finish. This is just a base layer of black. We're going to go inside and outside the ribbon. In fact, we're going to do the entire finial in black. Hardest part, of course, is doing that inside section. Only do a little space at a time, and you got to turn it. So this works out with it being on the lathe still. It makes it a little easier. Chuck holds it. All I've got to do is turn the spindle, which is easy enough to do. Now that it's painted black, you can really see the twist of that ribbon. The paint's dry. Now we're putting on, this is called size. It's gold leaf size, or any kind of metal leaf size. It's a glue, a liquid glue. You paint it on as evenly as possible. Then you wait. Depends on the glue. My glue, it says wait 20 to 30 minutes, but you want it to go clear, and it should be tacky at that point. Most size never truly dries. It'll always be tacky. So whatever you're putting onto your work, that covers your glue, but it's always a good idea to put something on top of that, whether it be, usually we use a lacquer on top of gilding. I am being a little careful. I don't want it on the inside of this ribbon, just on the outside. Then we're also going to do it, put the size on the ball, but not on that base. And this is my choice. You can do what you want. Maybe you want to gild the inside, but maybe you don't. You just do what you want to do. This is up to you, as you're the artist, so you have to make your decisions. I chose to do the outside of the ribbon and the ball, not the base of the finial, or the inside. I'm going to use some chameleon powder here. This is the Emma Cook chameleon powders. These are color shifting powders. This is a little sample kit. These jars are tiny, tiny, but you use a very little amount. What the color that we're seeing here, this red, this is just one of the colors that's in this this pot of chameleon powder. These are color shifting powders. You just got a glimpse there of the other color. Green is the secondary color in this powder. So really interesting. You get the light on it one way and it's red as it can be. Get the light in another direction and it's as green as grass. Kind of what I was looking for. I was looking for a Christmassy kind of a color combination, and this is it, red and green, and it really is lovely. You need the black so that the color kind of goes through and reflects out. If you didn't have it black, it wouldn't show up quite as good. So this came out pretty interesting. Well, I hope you've had an enjoyable time watching, and maybe you learned something. I enjoyed sharing it with you. This is Doug at Wood Spun Round, and until we meet again, I hope you're able to spin them round.